No.
All right, this is Kill You Last. I'm Peter Garacci.
I'm Alex Bashera.
And we have Marcus Pinn back for a second time. Welcome, Marcus.
Yeah,
Hello.
welcome back.
What's going on, man? We've been wanting to get you back under normal circumstances, but we might as well take advantage of this. So we were talking about, man, a heavy movie. I've been trying to avoid like real heavy, serious shit while I'm stuck inside my apartment, but you picked a movie that I love, all-time incredible movie, but not one that will leave you feeling positive about life while you're stuck in a pandemic.
Right down to the very end. Although, I will say, and it's not even just because of Richard Pryor, there's little moments of humor. To break it up. But no matter what, you're right. By the end of the movie, it's like, oh, man.
So we should say it's Blue Collar.
Yeah.
Paul Schrader, first movie he directed.
Yep.
After he wrote Taxi Driver.
Yep.
And it's got Richard Pryor in a... I mean, Richard Pryor is one of those people, he just can't help being funny. But he's fucking great as a dramatic actor.
Yeah, he is.
In this movie. And I was actually going to ask you guys, like, do you think we should spoil this movie? Because this is one that a lot of people have not seen.
That's true. Yeah, see, that's tricky. Normally, it's like, this was 78. It's like, oh, you had a while to see it. But I don't know. I feel like almost talking about it don't say the actual ending, but I think we can, you know.
Yes.
The one thing I wanted to say, and I mean, might as well get out of the way. To me, maybe the most horrific like death I've ever seen in a movie.
I was going to say,
and I don't want to say who it is because that gives away the movie. And it's and again, this is a movie that people should know and should watch, but for whatever reason, it's not very well remembered. I remember very specifically when this movie was like introduced to me and kind of shared with me, and I was like, oh my god, how is this movie? Like, how is it I never heard of this movie? So I'm curious. Like, this is one you picked out, Marcus. Like, what? Why of all the movies you picked this one?
It's because of that scene. It was very little. It had to have been before. No, actually, I was at 5 or 6, and my dad, he didn't have much filter movie wise about what I could see. Like, he would just have a movie on, and I'd come into the room and he'd be watching it, and I came in just as that character started painting the car just before his death. And I remember just like. And I didn't even watch the whole thing because after he, like, that very last moment when he, like, breaks out the window and his body's just, I was like, whoa, what is it? Like, if you're like 5 or 6, then you just walk into that scene. It's like, wait, what? And then when I was in high school and I started getting into movies more, it was just another thing that, it's because I was Taxi Driver was like one of the movies I was obsessed with by the time I got to high school. And I started tracing back any and everything, Paul Schrader, Scorsese, Harvey Keitel, and it, eventually led me to Blue Collar. And then I watched it. That scene came on, and I was in high school, so I was still, my dad was around still. So I was like, oh, Dad, do you remember watching this movie when he's like, yeah, no. And he remembered me being like weirded out by that scene and everything. So yeah, it all started with that. It's so funny. Like, that's why I like hopped up when you mentioned that. I was like, oh yeah, because it stuck with me.
I remember I was in like a screenwriting class. There's this guy, Randy Perlstein, who he's just a real character. He was in my improv class, and I found out that he was a cast member of the Chappelle Show. He's one of the white guys in the Chappelle Show. And he did a bunch of, he's done a bunch of commercials.
Is he the guy that did Dude's Night Out that isn't Bill Burr? Like dark hair.
I know who you're talking about.
Might be because Christian Finnegan is a comic who was the Mad Real World. That's the white guy in that. Yeah, he's in like every other.
Talking about the other guy, the other host of the racist draft or whatever.
So he was. I met him in like improv class, and what I found out is that the owner of the improv is the Pit, and that guy Ali Farnakian, who like came up with Tina Fey and all these people. He was just friends with Randy. They played poker together. And Randy co-wrote Cabin Fever with Eli Roth.
Wow.
And I don't know what happened. Like, they clearly had a falling out because their careers went separate ways, and he doesn't really bring Eli up. But he was in my improv class. I became friends with him. He goes, yeah, I was playing poker with Ali, and he challenged me to do improv. Like, he's like, why don't you just try to do this thing? And so I became friends with him, and then later found out all this stuff about him. He was like doing stand-up with Chappelle. And he actually was hosting. It's so funny because this is like I took a writing class with him. He ended up teaching a screenwriting class, and he like did a scene from this movie, and he gave me his VHS of this movie. This is how long ago this was. And he goes, I don't even know if you can get this anymore, but I want you to see this movie. And I was like a Taxi Driver was a big movie for me when I was a kid. I remember watching it. I remember it was like the first movie where I was like, I had to think about like, why is this a movie and why is this good? If that makes sense. Like if you watch a movie where the plot is clear and like the hero is clearly a hero and the bad guy is clearly a bad guy, you can understand like there's something like innate, like, oh, I understand why this is a movie. Taxi Driver is a movie where you're like, whoa, like how did this even come to be?
I felt the same, same.
And it's so funny because I love Albert Brooks is like one of my heroes. I love that Albert Brooks is in Taxi Driver, and that might have even been his first like movie role.
In the role that was Harvey Keitel was supposed to play that role.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, everything got switched up. So Sport was supposed to be black.
Yeah.
And then Harvey Keitel, because that's Scorsese's boy, especially during that time, he was going to be the campaign manager guy.
Oh, I never heard that story.
And then it was kind of like Harvey Keitel was like, no, I kind of want to be the pimp, blah, blah. And then Schrader and Scorsese were like, well, technically the pimp only has like a couple of quick scenes. And Keitel was like, I don't really care, like whatever. So then they switched the race to the pimp. Then they brought Albert Brooks on, and yeah.
Oh, see, I knew that there was like a thing where Scorsese specifically chose to have the pimp be white.
That was that Harvey Keitel's
because it was unusual at that time to have that character be a white actor. And I remember hearing Albert Brooks saying like he's talking to Paul Schrader, who wrote the script, and Schrader told Albert Brooks like your character is the only character that I don't really understand in the movie. And Brooks was like, "Oh, really? Like it's a movie about like murderers and pimps, and like I'm the one that you don't fucking get, like the nerdy, funny guy." Right. So I just remember Taxi Driver being huge, but I just didn't really know about. I may have seen American Gigolo at this point, but I just didn't really know about this movie, and it hit me like a fucking ton of bricks the first time I watched it. And I think it's because I grew up with like
start to finish.
Well, I grew up with union guys. Like my dad was a union laborer, my uncle, my grandfathers, everybody I knew, and I even worked like construction a few summers. So I had like sort of personal baggage with union guys and how the unions worked, and how in one regard they protected the workers and they made it possible for like immigrants like my family to like make money and buy houses, all that stuff. But in other ways, there was a lot of shit that they didn't exactly make things more efficient and smooth.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I had a lot of like personal baggage with unions. And then here comes this movie that is so like, it's a Greek tragedy. Like, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I described it to somebody like it starts with these guys committing a crime and then it just gets worse and worse. And like they start almost in hell. And they just go deeper and deeper into hell in a way.
Well, that's the thing. This movie, it was like one movie that turned into a whole other thing. Because I remember, because this is I saw this in 1998 for the first time. So it wasn't even like you could look up like deep synopsis on the internet. So by the time it's like, oh, it's going to be a heist movie. And then, by like the 30-minute mark. And then after that, it's like, no, midway into the movie, it was like, wait, weren't they supposed to they committed a crime? Oh, that's not even about, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, they stumbled onto something and it became something else. I thought it was going to be this like robbery heist movie. I had it in my head as they were planning that like the big middle chunk is going to be this like Rafifi style thing where like they're going to pull this heist off and it's going to be like a 30-minute scene, and it really wasn't. It just like totally went left field. Oh man, so it's like a really good point. I didn't even
Yeah, it's to me, and like the acting is, we said it like it's Yaphet Kotto, Harvey Keitel, and Richard Pryor. And at that point, Pryor was not considered a real actor,
right?
And he like they famously like these guys fought, like they were getting into fist fights.
I was going to say that all their performances, there's an extra layer, and I give them all respect because they gave great performances, but they also had to act as friends, and none of them liked each other. And it was like a three-way death match. Like there wasn't a combination. It wasn't like, oh, two hated Pryor, two hated Keitel. It was like each of them did not like each other. So that's
I didn't
to
know
be able
that.
to play for. Yeah, honestly, I always think to myself,
I think they were like Keitel's like
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, Keitel like famously told Pryor, like, "You're not a fucking actor. Who do you think you are?" Meanwhile, Pryor is acting the shit out of this movie. Like his performance is, because it's like, I don't like comedies, and I don't like movie. Like, the one thing, my one knock on Paul Schrader is, like, I heard somebody say that, like, whenever a European filmmaker makes an American movie, they get America wrong, because the movies are always too heavy. Like, I don't think outsiders get that, like, America, there's a lot of just, like, goofiness
bullshitting
about
around,
being an American.
Joking around.
Yeah. A little nuance, like, I completely agree with that.
It's not, and I don't mean, like, goofy as some, like a cover for some, like, dark underbelly. I just mean straight up, just, like, goofy, like, aw shucks, I can't believe this is happening kind of stuff. And whenever a European filmmaker makes a movie about Americans, it's always so fucking heavy. I know that, and Schrader's an American, but Schrader started out as a film critic, really into European cinema and Japanese cinema. So he's almost like, and he grew up not watching movies. He grew up, like, in a very strict home where he wasn't allowed to watch movies. So he is almost like an alien in a way.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's not a lot of levity in his movies. Yeah. And so, in that regard, I don't love, like, I mean, one of the things you can say about Scorsese is every one of those fucking movies is hilarious, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Like, Goodfellas is hilarious. Casino is hilarious.
1,000%.
Goodfellas is funnier than pretty much every comedy.
Oh, I'll take Pesci in Goodfellas and Casino over any comic performance, pretty much. Yeah. Except for maybe, like, Gene Wilder and Young Frankenstein. Like, it's pretty much my favorite comedic performances.
Yeah. That's
But it's interesting having, because again, Pryor is, he just, like, funny just oozes out of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But at the same time, it's such a tragic. The line that always sticks in my head is where he's like, I just ain't ever been good with money, man. I just could never figure it out.
Right.
And it's so fucking sad, and it's so true. And it's exactly how you would expect some, like, sad clown to just be. Like, you just can't, like, he just can't figure life out. Like, he just can't get it together. And it's unbelievable.
The scene that a lot of people go towards is the when who's the guy that comes to the house, what's his title, where he's trying to
the IRS guy?
Yeah, the IRS guy. Yeah, like, a lot of people call out that scene as, like, one of the high points of acting, like, in that film, when he's shuffling the kids around like kids that aren't even his, and then finally he just, like, loses his patience, and he just kind of, like, loses it, you know, on the guy. And
well, he like, so we should say, like, the movie's about three union they're car workers or auto workers.
Yeah.
And they're best friends, and they, you know, fucking party on the weekends, and they decide to rob. So they basically have a problem with the plant, and they have a problem with the union, and so their idea is they're going to rob the union safe as, like, a get rich quick scheme. And so the opening couple scenes is kind of setting the tone of, like, what their lives are like. So Richard Pryor lied to the IRS, and he claims 6 kids, even though he has 3 kids. And the IRS guys goes, like, he's like, yeah, you got Gail Sayers Brown, Jim Brown, Stevie Wonder Brown. It's like your kids' names. It's fucking amazing. But he just, I mean, I could talk just about Pryor. Like, Pryor, like, is so big for me, like, growing up. Like, I don't know that I even knew. I probably was introduced to Pryor with, like, Superman 3. And
I think I was well, maybe not. Maybe there was some stand-up thing I saw as a kid, but
and there was a lot of, I mean, he did a lot of crappy movies too. Like, movies that, I mean, I haven't even gone back to, but I'm sure The Toy does not hold up. You know,
that movie doesn't hold up for a few reasons. I mean,
that's a. I don't like the word problematic, but that movie's fucking problematic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Same. No, but, well, but there's a couple. Have you ever seen Bingo Long and his Traveling All Stars?
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh my God! It's this movie about the Negro Leagues, and it was early '70s. It's James Earl Jones, Billy D. Williams, and Richard Pryor, and they're all on this baseball team. And it's just about the early years of, like, the Negro Leagues, and they're traveling from town to town and all the, you know, nonsense that they go through. And of course, it's a serious movie, but Richard Pryor is the comic relief.
Yeah.
And then it's like this whole thing where like I don't want to give anything away, but that's another kind of forgotten movie. But Richard Pryor is really good in that, and there's a really good fight scene. It's funny because it's pre-Star Wars. There's like a scene where like Billy D. Williams and James Earl Jones are like best friends in the movie, and then they get into this like They Live style fight because they both kind of had it with each other. It's really good. It's really, really good.
Yeah. I remember Moving, which was kind of late in his run.
Oh man, Moving, yeah.
Which
well, that's like, I don't like
that was
guilty
towards
pleasure.
the end.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but Randy. Here's what's crazy. That's supposed to be this big comedy. Randy Quaid and Dana Carvey upstage Richard Pryor.
Yeah, that was Dana Carvey's like big break.
It sounds blasphemous to say, but it's true. Like he's not really that funny in that movie, but the supporting cast is.
It's funny because I was thinking yesterday. I'm not a huge SNL guy, and I was like, I don't understand people who like run out and watch movies because like it's based on an SNL sketch.
Yeah,
you know, I'm like, who's the guy? Who's the guy? Like,
well.
I got to go see Coneheads and you know, Night at the Roxbury. But the SNL people that I went out to see their movies was Mike Myers and Dana Carvey. Like that era, like when Wayne's World came out, I saw Wayne's World in the theater.
Mike Myers was
when Opportunity Knocks came out. I was like, Dana Carvey is going to be the biggest movie star in the world.
Yeah.
Got called that one wrong. But Pryor.
Side note. It's funny. Like we're talking about with Blue Collar, how there's this whole backstory with how they didn't get along. Oh, I was saying earlier that just like Heart of Darkness, they could have made that type of movie for Blue Collar. It was really like not so much for budgeting purposes, but the way folks didn't get along. But Penelope Spheris and Mike Myers fucking hated each other.
Oh no shit.
In Wayne's World, it like that's a whole separate story. And what's really cool is in different times, Marin has had Penelope Spheris on and Mike Myers on. And it's not like they throw shots at each other, but like the stories that each of them tell, I'm like, oh man, they still haven't let it go. But anyway, yeah.
There's like a lot of my favorite movies like came out of those kinds of situations. Do you know what I mean? I was just rewatching Out of Sight for the 100th time, and J-Lo was a fucking nightmare to work with. And
I didn't know that.
Steven Soderbergh and George Clooney will come out and say, yeah, they won't say like she sucks, but they'll just make little comments about, you know, them being on set and being ready to go and her being a fucking prima donna. But
that
guess
is
what?
Her reputation. It's the most consistent it's the most consistent, one of the maybe top 3 most consistent.
She's fucking great in that movie. And her and Clooney together are phenomenal together in that movie.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Keitel is another guy who... It's funny, I just watched The Duelist, which is Ridley Scott's first movie. Yeah. And he's in that. Yeah. And I just rewatched Reservoir Dogs, and Keitel basically made Tarantino's career.
Ridley Scott's career, and to some degree Scorsese's career. Like, Harvey Keitel has always had this, if he started out with you, / if you're a young filmmaker, he's with you forever. But he always has issues with like, you know, like he was... him and Kubrick, he was kicked out of Eyes Wide Shut, and obviously famously Apocalypse Now. Like when anytime Harvey Keitel, when he was in his, now it's whatever, but if it's his first movie with a well-known director, there's maybe 8 times out of 10 there's like some huge issue. But if you're like a young director, or if he started with you, which you're probably a young director, he's always like, I don't know why that is. It's such a weird thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, we just did King of New York, and he gave Abel like street cred for basically being like a more of a mainstream filmmaker, which is crazy because that movie is about as non-mainstream as you could possibly get. But and now he's become like a Wes Anderson player in his later years. Like he's in every Wes Anderson movie now.
Thank God.
Cool. I like that too. I think that's fucking rad. It's just funny. Like Keitel is so like Jewish / Italian New York.
Brooklyn.
That Brooklyn. Yeah. Like he just can't shed that accent and that attitude. So he
shows up in The Duelist, which is like a period movie. It doesn't distract me. It strangely doesn't distract me from that movie.
Yeah, to me, it's like, I mean, maybe because it's like, again, growing up here, it's like, I get that attitude, and I get how funny it is to people who are more genteel coming from other parts of the United States.
Right.
They don't wear their attitude on their sleeve quite so much. But yeah, Keitel's another interesting. And dude, Yaphet Kotto is one of my fucking...
He's fantastic in this.
Favorites.
Yeah.
And between this and Alien and Midnight Run. Like he's just one of the. I mean, he started like in exploitation films, right? Like this was right around the time he was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, what's the Isaac Hayes movie where he's the villain?
Is it Across 110th Street?
No. Well, that's him and Truck Turner. Yeah, he's the villain in Truck Turner, where he famously. Have you seen it? There's a great reference. Have you ever seen? You've seen New Jack City?
Yeah, we did it.
We did New Jack City. Yeah.
The scene, like post wedding, where there's the shootout and Wesley Snipes grabs the little girl, as a shield, just like when Martin Sheen grabs the kid in Truck Turner, which I think was 1974. I don't know about Cronenberg, but Mario Van Peebles specifically said in interviews like he wanted to rip this scene off where there's a famous shootout at the end in a hospital, and Yaphet Kotto grabs this little kid and like holds it, in front of him.
Shit.
Yeah. Which is I think. I mean, I know he was a Bond villain. I think he's another guy that could have had. I would have liked to see him be a villain more, because even his stature, especially when he Richard Pryor at that time was like. Well, I think he's always been kind of a skinny guy, and Harvey Keitel's not tall, so it only like accentuates Yaphet Kotto's like build, in that movie. So
dude, when they're walking, when they have the union meeting after the robbery, and they walk outside of the building, and you see how much bigger Yaphet Kotto is than Harvey Keitel. Like it's not even two men. Do you know what I mean? Yaphet Kotto is like such a man. That Harvey Keitel looks like a fucking doll, and Harvey Keitel is jacked.
Well, he is.
Yeah,
jacked.
He's always been jacked.
How tall is Harvey Keitel? Does anyone know? Like around about
5'6".
Yeah,
okay,
he's not a tall guy.
He is a very short guy because it makes him look huge. Which is both of them look big.
Yeah, and Yaphet Kotto is just like one of those guys where he just like he just has that gravity to him. Like it's just an amazing. I would watch him in pretty much anything. Like so fucking good.
I was gonna say though, even his stature didn't stop. So the scene just after the orgy scene, and then it cuts, and they're just sitting on the couch, was like the biggest like physical fight that they all had just before like they had to shoot that scene. And Richard Pryor like broke a chair over Yaphet Kotto's back.
Oh shit!
It was that's how much they didn't get along. So Harvey Keitel and Yaphet Kotto physically were getting into it, which respect to Harvey Keitel for going at him.
I know, Jesus.
And then like Richard Pryor wasn't like a factor. And then like while Yaphet Kotto had his back to Richard Pryor and he was struggling with Harvey Keitel, like Richard Pryor just took a chair to his back. Like I'm telling you, the making of this movie was a disaster. Like all three leading guys like just did not get along.
Yeah, wow. It's funny you brought up. So early on, they're all Harvey and Richard are married in this movie, so they sneak off on their wives, and Yaphet Kotto is like their party connection. Right. And like this is how naive I am, and also like how much the times have changed. I didn't even realize that the women were prostitutes at the party.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought they were hoes. I was like, because like in 2020, you could imagine like, oh, there's just some girls here, they're gonna bang those girls. Back then, it's like, no, you actually had to pay for that shit.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Now, like the hoeing has gone up since like 1974, where back then you would, because it's just assumed like, oh, they're clearly prostitutes if they're there, you know, they get banged. And now it's like, oh no, they met these girls. And now it would just be like, oh, we met these girls at the club.
Right, yeah.
But and that scene, like when he, Pryor makes it like takes the cocaine, he's like, it's just
that's
so
a great
much
scene.
Good stuff. Yeah. And then even the union guy, was it Eddie Knuckles?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think he was like a Broadway actor. He's fucking great. And again, like that guy reminds me of guys that I like saw growing up. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, and I love. I actually grew up near GM plant. A lot of guys that I knew growing up used to work at a GM plant in Jersey. That actually got closed, and it was the field. The field where it was cleared for years, and those guys got like. I remember like just hanging out with some of these guys, and they got like a buyout where they were like picking litter up and getting paid like $50 an hour because of the contract that they had with GM. It was like kind of like the end of they're like GM has to pay them for another year, so they had these like all these like bullshit jobs.
Right.
And but it was like that was like a staple of that area, having that GM plant.
Yeah.
And now it's a fucking Walmart.
Wow.
And it's just funny because that like with this movie, like it just makes me think of. Just being a kid and like because I worked on construction sites when I was a teenager, in the like the summer during college I would work for a month or two like I helped build a mall in New Jersey, and I worked in the there's a oil refinery, like the Exxon oil refinery in Jersey where I grew up, and like I just was around these guys, and I just remember, like again, I was very conflicted because I was like, I'd be like working real fast, and they'd be like, "Listen, kid, we're trying to work here forever. We're not trying to be done with a job in a week." So there's a lot of shit where I was like, "This is bullshit. Like you should try to work. You should try to do as good a job as you can do." And there was a lot of like people not taking pride in their work,
right?
Which I thought was like dehumanizing in a way. It kind of it robs you of your, like your self-respect in a way. If like because like 9 o'clock on the dot, we stop for coffee break, and 12 o'clock on the dot, we stop for lunch, and 3:15 on the dot, you fucking get the fuck out of there.
But that's union work, man.
What's that?
That's what life working in a union's like. I mean,
no, I know. It's just like that part of it bothered me. Maybe because I was like young and like
because you're a child, like, you don't get out.
I
of
was
the world
romantic,
works.
And I was like, I want to go out and like conquer the world.
Sure, yeah,
right.
But now looking back on it, I'm like, oh, like those guys, again, like my grandfather was able to come to this country.
Yeah, my grandpa's an immigrant from Italy, just like yours, right?
And not only buy his first house, but buy a beach house and have a retirement plan and all that shit.
Well, I don't know about, my nono definitely, he was a union worker through and through. My uncle took after him, did union work. Now he works in offices, but back then when he was in his 20s, it was all construction, building shit in the city. My nono helped build Madison Square Garden. As a union construction worker, and that was the thing. Like, it was all, it was hard work. It was blue collar work, but there's something about it that they really did take care of their employees, and there is a piece of it in this movie, although everything's a bit corrupt, obviously, and the way the movie goes is pretty fucked up. But if you look at the movie now, this movie was made in 1978. We don't take care of workers the way that they just were expected to take care of workers in the late 70s, which is pretty wild. Pension plans, everyone was getting a certain amount of wage. Everyone had a certain amount of break time. I mean, you're an Uber driver now. You don't even get benefits. Fuck that. Right. You don't get shit, dude. Yeah. I mean, this gig economy that everyone's in, like, I don't know. I'm just, especially now with the whole coronavirus thing, it's very interesting to me that, unionized work is typically blue collar work, right? So the unions that still do exist, maybe you're in the electricians union or something like that, or you fix elevators and things like that. But if you're just an office worker, which is, like just like a white collar job, a lot of those people are getting laid off now slowly. Oh shit. Sorry, man. Really? Damn, wait. I'd love to get into that real quick if you don't mind. I mean,
I was going to say with a 2-in-1 thing, outside of Roger and Me, which obviously Blue Collar would make an amazing double feature.
Yeah.
But as far as like an updated double feature is Ken Loach's latest film, Sorry We Missed You. It's literally about the downside of like gig economy. Like,
yes, okay. I got to see that.
It's really good, and I did. Not to get the plug in early, but I recently wrote about it on my site, Pinnland Empire, because it was like, I had planned on writing about it. I wrote a few paragraphs here and there. It was the second to last movie I saw in the theater before like we were on lockdown. And then I was working from home for like 3 weeks. And then at Monday, like the start of that fourth week, you get this note, this little like email. It's like, hey, we need to have a meeting, a Skype meeting with you, like my 2 supervisors. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I remember something else being up because I emailed my design manager. I was up early working too. That's why I'm a little bitter. And I emailed her. I was like, hey, do you want it like this or do you want it like that? Like kind of thing. Like it was like 8 a.m. and I was working. And then she didn't respond. And I was like, that's weird why she wouldn't respond. So then it was like a 15-minute meeting. Like, hey, we're letting you go. It was on the 30th. So it was like 1 day left on my health insurance. And to me, that's extra, not to make it super personal, but years ago I had a kidney transplant, so I need health insurance for life. Because like, just as an example, one of my anti-rejection meds uninsured is $1,100 a month, which is insane.
Fuck.
So anyway, the little sentences and paragraphs I wrote about Sorry We Missed You turned into just like my bitter rage about being how I was let go. So I wrote about that movie. And now looking back, I was like, damn, I could have thrown in a couple of lines or comparisons about Blue Collar. Although in my review of Sorry We Missed You, I compare it more to Bicycle Thieves. But all of these movies, Bicycle Thieves, Sorry We Missed You, Blue Collar, all 3 of these movies and others about just the downside of working and that kind of shit. They all have these like gut punching endings, just terrible endings. They're all amazing movies and deserve to be mentioned in the same breath. They're all equally good. But the one thing they have in common is just the way they end. It's just like, and that's how I feel. And that's how I felt like when I saw like the very, and not to give too much away, but like not to jump to the ending, but like in Blue Collar, I remember when the racial stuff started getting in, because it's like, because sometimes like depending on your ethnicity, your background, whatever, you relate to a movie a certain way. So up until a certain point, Harvey Keitel was cool. It's like, oh, he's got these two black friends, everything's cool, and then like he throws this racial slur out, and you're just like, oh man, damn it.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't see that coming.
You're disappointed because you're disappointed in a couple. I was like, damn, he had to go there. But two, it's also like, fuck, these guys were friends. Like take myself out of it. Like, they're friends, and that's always reminds me of The Killing, in Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, because Timothy Carey's whole part, he's the one that has to snipe out. He's the one that has to shoot the horse. And there's this scene throughout I don't know how well you know The Killing.
No,
Stanley
Peter,
Kubrick's
do you
The
know
Killing.
it?
I just rewatched it a couple weeks ago. One of my all-time favorite movies.
So there's that scene where like, so Timothy Carey, he has to go on the stakeout, and like the guy, the security guard, the guy, he's black. And at first they start to like, oh, hey, we're both in the military, everything's cool. And then Timothy Carey doesn't mean it. He has to find a way to get this guy off his case. So he drops the N-bomb. He doesn't mean it, but he's just like, I need to get this guy away from me, so I'll just make him think I'm racist. And it's a similar thing in Blue Collar. It's just like, damn, these guys are getting along, and then now it's like shit, it really just kind of hits you in the gut.
Dude, there's so many things I want to.
I have a Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Alex, because
I have a question because I think it's very interesting. We just had over 20 people get laid off literally yesterday at my agency, and I'm finding out it was brutal, dude. I had to tell this associate who works with me, she's from India. They were going to sponsor her visa. All the paperwork was done. She got picked in the lottery. It was super like working out for her. I was like backing her, and she was in line for a promotion. And they're fucking taking it all away, man. Our client left. So, because the client's leaving, it's like the worst timing ever for that to happen. But I get it. It's a resort client, so we advertise for this resort company, and I'm not going to say who they are, but it's just they're feeling it right now. No, they're not open. They're closed, so they can't afford an advertising budget. I get it. But because that's who she works for, she's 100% allocated to that client. They are not going to sponsor her visa. We have 90 days left on the contract, and then basically she's going to have to go back to India. And I had to deliver that fucking news to her, which was
that's the worst.
It was brutal, but also like I didn't agree with any of the decisions they made. So like I'm just like the whole time like on her side I'm still trying to fight it. Anyway, the whole thing is like I don't even know how safe my job is. This stuff is going to affect me very soon. Luckily I work on another client, so we'll see. And I don't want to bore anyone with the details, but dude, by July, it could very well be up for me, depending on how things go here.
And when I hear stories like that, it's kind of like, oh, I shouldn't complain too much. I don't want to give too much of my info away, but it's like this is one of the few times in life where it's like, and let me be clear, I'm definitely collecting unemployment. But even without unemployment, I am in a position where it's just like, okay, I have a cushion for a couple of months. I don't have to worry too much. But now that I have unemployment, and also surprisingly how easy it was. In the midst of Corona. So by day 10, I got my first payment, direct deposit, from signing up to the day 10. Yes, it was the easiest thing ever.
Oh, that's great. I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, but when I hear situations like that, it's like I'm still mad for myself, but it's like there's even worse. Like there's people. There's people who are way worse off. That's
the thing. And not that. You totally have a reason to feel fucking awful or angry at the same time. I genuinely don't, they don't take care of they give you 1 day with health insurance. Like at least my company, I will say this, they are extending health insurance for 3 months
thank God.
After.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there is and I don't know how they did that. I don't know if they made a deal with the health insurance guy. I have no idea, but they made that clear. So the people that are getting laid off, at least have that. And but
Cobra
anyway,
is no
like,
joke. I've had to pay for Cobra twice
Yeah.
in life. Cobra is
it's so
not
expensive,
fun.
right?
Yeah.
Well, there's some like crazy entry thing, and depending on what year it goes up, but it's like $200 and something to entry thing, and then it's like 500 something a month until you get,
Until
yeah.
you make some sort of what is it called? I don't even know those insurance terms.
The deductibles,
Yeah. You mean
Well, no, like at work, and I've learned that this is nonsense too, because one place I work completely waived it, but like, oh no, it's like this trial period. So the standard thing, a lot of jobs, like some are 60 days, but most are 90 days where you have to wait for health insurance to kick in. So that when I've gone from job to job in the past, I have to get Cobra to be covered because the new job won't cover you until 3 months in.
Gotcha. Yeah, and you have that serious condition, you can't risk it. Right.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I have such a complicated like work and jobs and what people do is like something I think about all the time. And I think like I haven't had a quote unquote real job in 2 years, and that job, the guy started like I left my job to start with him. He then delayed my start time. And I was like, listen, man, I'm out of work now because you asked me to leave my last job. He was so, and then he was like real cavalier about my health insurance. And then he let me go for quote unquote financial reasons. It was going to give me like 1 week severance. And I'm like, remember at the start where I didn't start for 3 weeks because you asked me to delay my start time because you weren't to help you out.
Right.
Like I need you to help me out. But with like the thing with like labor too, it's like I do think, and there's a lot of like conflicting stories about, because it's funny because the 70s is a very specific period for this because unions got very strong, and it's funny, the Irishman is a lot about this. Like, in a lot of ways, labor is the victims of their own success because they got a lot of concessions. I remember when I was a kid, dude, my dad was getting prescriptions for $2.
Wow.
And going to the doctor, like the copay was $5, whatever it was. It was not a lot of money. And as that boomer generation got older and started retiring, dude, the union. When my dad was in his 40s and 50s in the union, all the other laborers were 40 and 50. There weren't 21-year-olds going in to pay into the system, to pay into the retirement fund.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So there is that. And what happened with GM, the GM plant, it got too expensive to pay all those guys in Jersey, so they moved the plant to Mexico. Like that's literally what happened. But at the same time, also like the little reading I've done about China, like we started to. Both sides, Democrats and Republicans, went to China in the 70s and were like, we basically want you guys, we want to export our manufacturing here. Mm-hmm. And they set it up in China so that they could basically get slave wages in China and not pay people to do the work. And, I was like listening to something about Henry Ford, and like Henry, I always bring up, there's this one essay that I always bring up, and it got turned into a book, but you don't really need to read the book because the essay tells you everything you need to know. Mm-hmm. It's called Shop Craft. It's called Shop Class as Soul Craft. And it's this guy he was a PhD who got a job working at a think tank, and he's sitting in the think tank going, this sucks. And he was a motorcycle repairman as a kid and as a college student. And he's like, you know what? He goes, I was told that if you're smart and you want to like really do a lot of deep thinking, get, study in school and get an education. He goes, I did more thinking as a motorcycle repairman than I do as literally working at a think tank.
Right. Yeah.
So he went and opened his own shop. And the whole point of the essay is how we in this country are taught to downplay like manual competency. And that what you really a mark of success is to get the office job and do the spreadsheets. And we wonder why people are miserable because at the end of the day, they don't even have a work
receipt.
that they. There's no
like
show.
A real product.
I remember being in college and then I went to.
That's how I feel.
My grandfather told me become a lawyer because those guys don't do work. And then I went and worked at a law firm, and these guys were doing 15 hours a day. They were killing themselves.
Yeah.
But they were miserable because my grandfather, what he meant by work is digging a hole outside in the cold.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he didn't want that for me. He wanted me to wear a tie and sit in an office. But to him, that was not work. Work is what you did with your hands. You know? So that's why I probably like romanticize it more too. But like I just spent the last year like helping my family build a house. And seeing guys like literally it was a drawing. It was a set of plans, and now there's a structure that I can walk inside of and live inside of.
Yeah, well, that's my line of work.
That to me is a fucking work is a work of art.
So I was gonna ask Marcus, what do you mind saying, like what industry you were working in and
Oh yeah, the design, specifically furniture design. I design and draw office spaces, interiors, furniture, but specifically it's AutoCAD, which kind of like in my world is the trade. Like that's why when this whole thing's over, the fact that I know AutoCAD and have been using it since 12, so thank God to my junior high school for incorporating it, and also other drawing programs and 3D rendering programs. Like I know them all, so it looks good on a rendering. It looks good on a resume. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. Excuse my complete ignorance. What is AutoCAD?
It's architectural drafting, but on the computer.
And you had that in high school?
Hand. Junior high school.
Wow.
So 1993 is when I first.
We had it in my
grade.
school. And I love architecture and I love design. And one of my great regrets is that I never studied it in school.
Wow.
Everything Peter was saying earlier resonated with me so much because it's like I'm learning now from my friends who have kids. Like one of my friends, he has a 10-year-old, and a couple of my friends have like 5 and 6-year-olds and stuff like that. And you learn that there's like shop class is like a myth to kids now who are like 20 and 21. But like no, like we had my high school had like multiple cars in the school. Like there was a real shop class, there was a real woodworking class, there was home ec, and they don't they don't have that. I mean, they don't have gym class.
I'm 28. I didn't have it. I'm 28 years old.
Yeah, I thought like everyone, like who was it? Just when you meet folks who are younger than you, and like something like Saved by the Bell comes up, and then like they make a joke, and they're just like, they didn't have actual cars in high school. It's like, yeah, we did. We had 3 cars. We had the thing that goes up and down. We worked on cars. We did wood shop class, and it's like my uncle to this day. He said everything that Peter said. He was just like, not everyone needs to go to college like right away. Imagine like you're 18 out of high school, and you could be making good money by the time you're 21, but there's like society kind of thinks like, no, manual labor, hard labor, blah, it's not good. But it's like there's a lot of like unions and other things. Like there's a lot of protection there, and people don't really look into that, where it's like if you don't go to college, you're made to feel like you're kind of a loser. It's this unspoken, and sometimes it's actually spoken outright. Yeah. And so yeah, everything. Like my uncle to this day says that he's just like, they got rid of home ec, they got rid of shop, they got rid of wood shop class. Like it's important to have a trade to be able to do something just in case the office job that doesn't work out.
What's funny with what's happening now, and I'm like obsessed with like HGTV shows. There's like Hometown, there's Flipper Flop, like
Property Brothers, all that stuff.
Yeah, and people like there is this kind of newfound like everybody now people are baking fucking bread. Yeah, and like it's easy to make fun of that. Yeah, but those are skills that like I wish my grandmother would have taught us how to do all this shit. Like they were survivors because they know how to survive. Like they know how to do shit. Yep. And especially in New York City, like you could pay somebody to wipe your ass in this town. The amount of people in this town who don't know basic like how to function like a human being because they are constantly paying other people to do stuff to me is ridiculous. And there's a weird attitude of like only certain people should have certain skills. Why not learn skills? Like it doesn't mean if you know how to fix a car, you're not an auto mechanic. Yeah. You're just somebody who knows how your car works. Like, why not know how the giant machine that you have that you own that's really expensive? Like why not know some rudimentary facts about how it works?
Like imagine right now, I mean Manhattan, maybe not so much, but plenty parts in Brooklyn, definitely parts of Queens, and obviously Staten Island. Like if you're in a position where it's like, oh, maybe I lost my job, or I don't have enough money to buy groceries as regularly, it's just like a lot of those outer those boroughs have places where you don't have to own a home. Like I've had apartments before where I had a front yard or a backyard, and it's just like, imagine if you knew how to. I mean, this one thing I don't know how to do, but it's like, imagine if you know how to grow tomatoes. Yeah, and grow, especially now it's April. Like this is kind of like March, April, May. Like this is actually the time to do it, where that kind of stuff would be flourishing. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of
funny you bring that up because I belong to a community garden here in Spanish Harlem.
Oh,
So
awesome.
I'm
That's
waiting
awesome. That's awesome.
because I was supposed to be assigned a plot now, and now it's being delayed because of the garden is technically closed, and I'm so
Right.
frustrated because if I had a plot, I could just go in there and start planting. But I did last year do some planting, and because I grew up on a farm in Jersey for part of my life, and I've been talking to my brother about maybe it's time for us to just start planting shit and getting more animals and like making our own food. Like if that really is what it comes to, like so be it. But I do want to say, like, because you brought up your website and stuff, like, so in case anybody didn't listen to the last time you were on, and they should, when we talked about raising Arizona, that was
Great
a fucking
episode.
amazing
One of my
episode.
favorites.
Like I found Marcus through Twitter. Like one of my obsessions is I want to be part of film Twitter.
Yeah, it's so funny. Peter wants so bad to be.
I want to be like a film
movie Twitter.
guy. I want to be in that world. And I started following you, and like Marcus does this amazing thing where you do like shot for shot comparisons from film to film. And how like different
Marcus
films
is a great
influence each
follow on Twitter.
On
Twitter. Thank you. I
Twitter.
appreciate that.
I mean, I was talking to my mom. Just side note, my mom follows you on Twitter, Marcus.
No way.
Yeah,
Oh.
she was like, "Oh, Marcus, you're having Marcus on." I was like,
Oh,
"Oh,
wow.
you know him?"
Okay, well,
And it's
like
funny-
Pinnland Empire. Yeah.
And what's
Swear to
funny
God.
to me is that, and I think I sent you a message. This is like because you casually throw out a reference to Dead Zone, which is one of my favorite fucking movies. So we connect on that level. And
Yeah.
I think I sent you a message where it's like you posted a bunch of movies, like stills from movies that were really significant to you, and literally one of them is Heat, which is my favorite movie of all time. And the rest I didn't even recognize. So I
Right.
love that we have like connections on certain movies.
I think you said that. You said
yeah,
that.
and then there's other
you
movies.
said
Then
that.
there's
You
other
said that.
movies
Yeah,
where I was
yeah.
like, I don't even know what the fuck this guy's talking about.
Yeah.
You're
Because
the
I
only
love
guest
that,
that ever stumps Peter too. Like, I mean, it's
wow.
really rare.
Well, I'm more. I think your tastes are a little bit more avant-garde than my are.
Well, I always have
pretty-
my wife says the same thing. There's for me, there's not much of a middle. You'd be surprised of the middle stuff. And I'm not saying that status-wise that I don't know, but like the weird avant-garde stuff to like not so much trashy, but just like anything like Happy Madison, Broken Lizard, like all that stuff. I respect that stuff just as much as I do like Tarkovsky. Like, and that's like why. I mean, he's also one of my best friends. But the shows that he was in America, like that's our whole shtick. It's like we love Van Damme movies just as much as we love Tarkovsky movies. But so yeah. So that's.
It's funny. I stumbled upon Hard Target right after the
nice.
It was right after the lockdown happened, and I was like, oh, this is a movie that I missed. And
you hadn't seen it before.
It was
Both of us
whatever
have.
There's a
reason-
lot of amazing shit in that movie.
Well, that movie, for
Yeah.
whatever reason, was so comforting to me in the first couple of days of the lockdown that I watched it 3 times in a row.
Nice.
It
It's
was
one of
something
those-
like so
yeah.
soothing about it, which
There's
is weird. 'cause
something
It's
about
not
Van Damme movies have that. Like I could have maybe not recently, but I've watched Lionheart, stopped, and then just watched it like all over again. Growing up, sometimes you didn't have to because it was on TNT a lot in the 90s. But
no, I think my movie taste is is pretty square. Like there's nothing on there where
see, but
I might be more enthusiastic about certain things than other people are, and I might be less enthusiastic about certain things. But I don't think I'm particularly like cutting edge or avant-garde with my taste.
See, I don't mean to bash film Twitter, but like when you said that thing, I want to be part of film Twitter. The reason why I kind of winced at that is like because the more I get to know some of these like film critics who, and I hate making things about age because I just don't like doing it. But sometimes it is what it is, and sometimes older folks are literally out of touch too.
Yeah.
But you learn like certain like respected film critics now who are in their 20s. You'll see them tweet like, I don't like to sound like the old man, but like they'll be like about to watch Godfather for the first time, or it's like about to watch Taxi Driver for the first time. And it's not. Let me be clear: you don't have to like those movies, but I just feel like, and maybe this is me being uppity, but from like a film critic, journalistic standpoint, there's a bit of history there. So it's kind of like why would like forget like you have to see this movie, but it's kind of like. If you're going to write about, let's just say you're going to write, let me be basic. If you're going to write about The Irishman, but
Yeah.
you haven't seen a lot of Scorsese movies,
Yeah.
sure, you can write about it at face value, but I think it makes a critique and a review more when you have a lot of more things to reference from. Or
Yeah,
like there's a
absolutely.
lot of, and not to take it what I do, I'm totally silly with some of my comparisons, but a lot of it, it's like, if you can see my books, a lot of it, it's like between the books I read and just a simple director's commentary track, where so many directors are like, oh, I wanted to rip this scene off from such and such, which is why sometimes I get testy when like someone would be like, oh, that's bullshit. Actually, no, the director said it himself. So it's kind of like film Twitter can sometimes be really like pretentious and like they'll look almost just like the conversation we had where it's just like learn a trade, like, because that's important. Like they'll look down on movies like, oh, this movie, like how what some people say about Scorsese, like that exposes a lot of people themselves, and then I'll go down a rabbit hole, and it's like, okay, you're 26 years old, so that's why you said that. And it'll be like, oh, Scorsese, he made another mob movie, and it's like, we're talking, all right, we're at almost year 60. There's 5 legit mob movies.
Right.
One of them's a little debatable. So it's like, what are you talking about? And I feel like, and then to me, I raised this question in a tweet once, and everyone ignored it. And it's just like, I think that resonated. I feel like if you see Italian-American last names, you just assume there's like a mob, and then there's a little bit of bigotry there too. I think just because you see Robert De Niro, Scorsese's name on a movie, oh, it's a mob movie. It's like actually King of Comedy, Cape Fear. Like none of that's like
not a mob movie.
Like, De Niro doesn't even play an Italian in any of them.
Exactly. You're just seriously. He's half Irish in Goodfellas. He's all Irish in The Irishman. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He's Jewish in Casino. Like there's so many. Yeah. A lot of people they tell themselves a lot.
I have a question for you. Do you think that the pretentiousness? I mean, first of all, I'll say something. You can tell me if you agree. I think that the reason why maybe Twitter in general and specifically like film Twitter, the pretentiousness rises to the top because like a controversial thing to say is easier to get behind. Like you really want to retweet someone's opinion that you hard agree with. But if someone just says, I like The Godfather, nobody's really going to retweet that. But if someone says, I don't like The Godfather and here's why, like it's just more juicy and more shareable. And I think that's got to be part of it.
Yeah.
But then also I was going to ask you, do you think politics at all plays into sort of the lack of respect for certain types of maybe some classic films?
Yes, but then even that
okay.
goes into, well, yes. Like, so for example, like, I'll just throw out like directors who like maybe as people didn't have the best reputation. Everyone from Hitchcock to Woody Allen.
Yep.
You see a lot of like comments where it's just like, oh, he was an abuser. He's terrible to women. I'm not watching this movie. And it's kind of like, the best I can say, it's like, fine. I'm not going to,
Sure.
like, fine. But it's like, you are closing yourself off to a lot of great art. I understand, some people don't want to separate the art from the art. Fine. But then my whole thing is why this becomes a whole web of stuff is that it's like, then it becomes really selective because the same specific people who hate Hitchcock, who hate Woody Allen will be like, then they'll tweet something by like, Miles Davis, and it's like, Miles Davis was really shitty to like the women who he was abusive. So it's kind of like, so where do we draw the line? And then it becomes like it's too exhausting to draw the line. So the best thing you can do, it's just like the way I look at it. A good friend of mine was like a most recent example was just like, so the whole like with Manchester by the Sea.
Oh yeah, Casey Affleck.
Casey Affleck stuff actually came up again because when it first happened in 2010, it was an issue. And then, my friend worded it the best. He was just like, all right, fine. If you don't like Casey Affleck, okay. But it's not like he didn't write the movie. He didn't direct the movie. He didn't play every role in the movie. Right. He wasn't like the cinematographer. He wasn't the boom mic guy. Like there's so many people involved in it. And just because of one guy who may or may not have did something, like you're just going to disregard this. And side note, Manchester by the Sea is so good, and but there's so many examples of that. So it just it can get messy if you wanted to. It's one of those things. If you want to go down that road, fine. Like there's certain people, actors. It's a little, but with like filmmakers and writers who personally, like I know about their personal life, I don't necessarily like or want to support. But I'm not going to tweet about it. I'm not going to stand on a high. I'm just gonna maybe not watch it and that's that. It's not going to be
you
like,
can just not watch something. You
and
don't have to,
and don't have to announce it to everyone. It's just kind of like, just then do your part and just be like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Totally.
Marcus, my answer to that is I agree with everything you said, and it's really easy for you to say it in the middle of film Twitter where you are. So I wish I could say the same stuff while also being like in the center. But it's funny because it's like I think it's kind of like with Picasso, where people look at like the later Cubist stuff and go, "Oh, I could do that," but they don't realize that Picasso could draw perfectly, like he was a draftsman before. So people don't want to learn like the early stages of being a craftsperson before they want to jump to
history is important. Yeah. And people look at history, people associate history with school, and then it becomes like I kind of understand too. It's like Lawrence of Arabia, like, you know, if you don't want to see Citizen Kane, like sometimes the reputation that's put on these movies, it feels like a parent,
right?
Like, and then immediately you want to rebel like against it. But sometimes just from history is important,
especially history and art.
Facts.
History in a particular form of art. It truly is, you know, any present day form of whatever art you're talking about. You are standing on shoulders. You absolutely are. There's just no denying that. So like in comedy, I mean, I don't think anything I've ever seen from Lenny Bruce is funny, really. But I definitely will never be like, you know, disrespectful for what it meant to comedy, because without it, it wouldn't be what it is today. So like that's to be like, oh, like I'm edgy because I don't think Lenny Bruce was good, which no one would say that, but whatever. That's like an analogy to like maybe I'm edgy as a film critic because I don't think Godfather was good or Goodfellas is good. Like it's just like there's a lack of reverence and then also a lack of understanding that is just obvious to anyone who does recognize the greatness of certain.
Well, it's like with stand up now, like Louis C.K. and
Louis is a perfect
like
example.
Dennis Miller, like people who say like I hate when comedians are like, oh, I never thought Dennis Miller was funny.
It's
or
always
I
comedians.
I hate Louis. It's like, come on, you're inside, like you're part of the tribe, so don't attack somebody who's in the tribe to like. That's one of my things too. Is just like, I mean, maybe because I'm Sicilian, it's like don't talk about the family outside the family.
That's yeah.
You know
that is very. That's so Italian.
Sure.
You fucking
so
sauce monkey.
Same thing with like if you're a filmmaker, like you're in that community, that's your tribe. Don't attack. And it's funny because this kind of takes us back to Blue Collar, because the thing that's so brilliant in like how the characters are manipulated, it basically tells you what's going to happen is that whatever the beast is, whether it's the auto factory or it's the government or it's, you know, whatever that monster is, it's always going to try to turn people against one another.
Yeah.
But you know, the whole thing, don't go against the my thing is like, mine isn't so much that, it's like talk your shit before their downfall.
Yes.
It's not about, I don't know if I'll respect or not respect you, but it's just like, say you don't like this. Like, that's why there's well, he is funny to me, but also as far as integrity goes, like a guy like Jim Norton is someone who like, but this just comes from years of listening to Opie and Anthony and watching Tough Crowd and all stuff.
I'm right there with you, man.
Jim Norton's like the biggest open book. So he's someone who I know how he feels about certain people. And, you know, rest in peace, like a guy like Patrice O'Neal, who's someone like, he spent like from, it's so funny, like, because when The Hangover got big and stuff, he was like one of the biggest trash talkers about Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah.
He did not stand Zach Galifianakis.
Yes.
And he made it known while he was alive. So it's one of those things like, cool. I wish Patrice, a lot of people wish he was alive now.
God,
so
I wish he was here to speak to this today.
Norm Macdonald has a great, like, long bit about, he goes, a friend of mine, when the Cosby thing came out, he goes, you know what the worst thing is the hypocrisy. Yeah. And he goes, no, I'd say the rape was the worst thing, and then maybe the lying about the rape, is maybe being hypocrite is way down on the list. That's the worst. Maybe it's the holding the chloroform to knock the girl out, and maybe
McDonald shit. That's
such a
funny.
He goes, no, the hypocrisy. It's like no. It's like the raping is the worst part, and that's really what gets people. It's like because people. There is like a pagan aspect where you create these gods out of some of these artists. So whenever that artist lets you down, then you have to. It's like finding out that Santa Claus doesn't exist. Like you have to because then you're exposing yourself for liking the thing. My rule of thumb is, because I just went back and Chinatown is one of my favorite movies of all time. So anything that Roman Polanski did before the rape is okay. Anything after the rape, I feel not comfortable with. So
do you really feel that way though?
What's that?
Do you really feel that way though?
Yeah. So Kobe Bryant to me is too important. So I have to Kobe. I have to put.
What do you mean?
Aside, he as a figure to me of from my childhood was so important that I have to compartmentalize the rape accusations. And Michael Jackson, Thriller is so important to me that I just assume that anything bad that he may have done came after Thriller, so I don't deal with that. But Thriller is okay.
But that's what I'm talking about. I understand, but it just gets too it just becomes too much to think. When was it? It's so hard for me.
And a lot of
I'm not really
do that.
I'm not really with you on that.
Because you said I haven't liked many Polanski movies since, but then I think 2010, The Ghost Rider, that movie is really, really. It was in my top 10 of 2010. It was my best. It was almost the short list of the decade. Yeah, it's this crazy cast. It's Jim Belushi and Pierce Brosnan and Ewan McGregor and Kim Cattrall. It's this crazy cast of folks. Oh, who's the guy from Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? Not
Eli
Clint Eastwood. Yeah, Eli Wallach has Eli Wallach has a random scene in The Ghost Rider. It's a great movie, but then it's shit when you look factually what he did and the freedom he was given. Any other normal person on trial, it's no, you're being remanded. But it's I think I'm. Well,
not only that, but they gave him an Oscar, and all those people stood up and cheered.
Yeah.
All those Hollywood people that would later, talk about Me Too and whatever, literally got up on their feet and cheered him.
But why can't you recognize that there's a hypocrisy and that also that bad people can make good art?
Yeah.
I don't.
They do.
Yeah, they do all the time.
Almost exclusively. A lot of the times.
I mean, a lot of times.
They're often
at least egocentric. It's
very going back, Caravaggio is one of my favorite painters. The guy, he killed a guy. He was on the run for most of his life, running from the police. I mean, and it's funny because a lot of this stuff used to be hidden. I was just telling somebody back in the day, Clark Gable, when he was first starting out, killed somebody with his car. And a low level studio executive.
I bring that up as often as I can.
Low level studio exec went to jail because Clark Gable was too important to the studio.
Oh shit! I didn't. I feel like that's something I should have known. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's a famous Hollywood story. A lot of this stuff just wouldn't get out back in the day.
Well, I take it to Paul Schrader. Paul Schrader's a guy who a lot of these, I don't want to make this about film Twitter, but a lot of these younger film Twitter folks discovered Paul Schrader, the director, through First Reformed, and they loved it. And then they go back and and he wrote Raging Bull, and it's just from his writing to just his own personal views to the fact that he still says Oriental to describe an Asian person. It's just I feel like if some of these people knew who Paul Schrader, Paul Schrader is the kind of guy who he'd insult these young kids. He'd call them wusses and I don't want to be around you. I don't want you to like my movie. It's similar to John Cassavetes. John Cassavetes, his first couple of movies that were the ones that he claimed Shadows and stuff. Folks in Europe loved it because they were just oh, this is French New Wave, but American, and he's not like these regular Americans. And then when he started going out to do tours, him and Ben Gazzara and Peter Falk, they were just these loud, obnoxious, drunk Americans. And there's so many stories about these European film cinephile folks meeting them for the first time and being disappointed because they had it. It's he makes these movies that are scored by Charles Mingus and they're super artsy. But then as soon as, Falk and Gazzara and Cassavetes get to France or Germany, they're just where's the liquor? Where's the beer? And they're just oh, we didn't think you were like this. We thought you were a different American, which I actually love. But I actually do love that, by the way.
I do too. And again, as someone who who's comes from Europeans, but poor Europeans that were not they were peasants.
That's it. Yeah, there's
and going back
class.
there, I always loved the ugly American stereotype because I think because European sophistication is so nihilistic. And I always say the thing about Italy is they and it's funny because what's happened in the last like couple months, but this is going back as far as when I was a kid. They don't have any hope for the future, so they just spend their money on shoes and sunglasses and new cell phone. You know what I mean? It's like their sophistication is born out of nihilism, because if they were hopeful for the future, they would be buckling down and working and starting businesses and having kids. Yeah. And instead, they're getting a new pair of sunglasses every week because they got nothing else to look forward to. And it's funny how like Italy now is in even worse shape. Yeah. And this is my experience from 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And now even in more so, that's the case. So I always liked, and it's funny because I was thinking like, you know, Schrader started out as a film critic who became a filmmaker. And same thing with like the French guys, like
a lot of them, a lot of French New Wave
cinema.
Yeah.
And they championed lowbrow, what was considered lowbrow American movies, Hitchcock and westerns and stuff like that.
They love John Ford.
Yeah, and I've been
Nicholas Ray.
on a real Tarantino kick lately, and I think it's because, well, one, I mean, I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a movie that I didn't love right away, but I couldn't stop thinking about it for 6 months after I'd seen it. Right. And so now since then, and it's funny because you know Roman Polanski plays a part in that movie. Yeah, and. You know, when Pulp Fiction came out, it was such a like foundational thing for me, where it's like all my movie experience and knowledge kind of like that's like sort of the center of my like movie universe in a way, because how old I was and seeing it in the theater and what it meant to me at the time. So I have to grapple with Tarantino always. Yeah, and so now like I've been on the
same exact way,
and I've been on a kick with I was listening to an interview with him, and he said that, you know, they're like, where did you learn how to write dialogue? He goes, from Elmore Leonard and David Mamet. And I already loved Leonard, and I love Mamet anyway. So I was like, now I'm going back to Mamet and Leonard because of Tarantino. And I found a clip where he's talking about how Rosemary's Baby is basically a perfect movie, which also with John Cassavetes. And so I'm going back and like rewatching Rosemary's Baby. And it's like, to me, like that's like, I don't watch a movie. I mean, I can just enjoy a film for itself, but I love all the different tangents that a given movie can lead you down. You know?
I was the same way. I always felt, two side note, there really need to be, not use the exact names, but like it would be even if it's like a like a fictional movie about just the situation that Polanski and Cassavetes were in during Rosemary's Baby, because this is super rare, and they're both competitive people. Where it's like Rosemary's Baby was up for these Oscars, but John Cassavetes was in the movie, and at the same time he was making Faces, and then Faces became an Oscar contender too. So it's like you're directing your competition. I always found that weird how because it didn't take that long to make a movie like Faces. You know they shot. I mean, it took months to make, but it's like it was shot. Most of it was shot in Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins' house. So it's like you have this movie, and then the lead actor is also on the side directing a movie that went on to get nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Screenplay, and like one other thing. And then like Roman Polanski afterwards, he was like the year after he was quoted, he said Faces wasn't a movie. It was just like it felt more like a side experiment, you know, than a movie, and all that kind of. It was like this weird unspoken rivalry. But
it's funny because there's a thing on YouTube that, and I never really like listened to Roman Polanski speak. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole like Criterion thing on YouTube about Rosemary's Baby, and he's talking about. And I was waiting to hear him talk about Cassavetes, and he's like, "Yeah, I didn't have a good experience with him." He goes, "He just wanted to improvise and play around, and like I wanted things to be precise and exact." And
that's another
and he goes,
thing.
He said John Cassavetes like he didn't like the clothes, and he wanted to wear sneakers. And so basically, when he was wearing sneakers, his performance was good, and when he wasn't wearing sneakers, he was really difficult to deal
that's funny.
with.
Yeah, that's
it's
funny.
Such a funny fucking thing.
He's one of the best guys to read about too. Two books, Accidental Genius and Cassavetes on Cassavetes are two of my favorite film books. Because John Cassavetes he was many accounts difficult to work with, but he knew it. It wasn't like he was ignorant to the fact. He knew how difficult of a person he was.
Yeah.
And there's other like a very great cinematographer, but he's not like a jazzy movie. Caleb Deschanel, who shot like The Natural and The Right Stuff and all that stuff. He was the original cinematographer on Woman Under the Influence. and that movie was kind of all over the place. So like they'd set up, we're going to shoot here, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. And then like the day of, Cassavetes would like change his mind. And Caleb Deschanel, who came from these like, he's multi-Oscar nominated, like I just said, The Natural and The Right Stuff and those kind of movies. Like he's like, I can't work like this. It's like, I need this to be that. And then they had this huge blow up and then he left the movie. But just, yeah, I always am fascinated by stories about two people who kind of
going
clash.
from like high to low, like you brought up Timothy J. Carey, who was also like a famously really difficult person.
A Cassavetes regular.
Tarantino wanted to cast him in Reservoir Dogs, but he might have been sick at that point, but he was just not. He was going to be play the Lawrence Tierney part in Reservoir Dogs.
Oh wow!
And Timothy J. Carey did 3 Columbos, which I've been going back and watching Columbos. And there's a Columbo where John Cassavetes plays the murderer.
Yeah. That's one of the good ones.
Him and Peter Falk were good friends.
One of the great ones, yeah.
And I love, again, and that to me, that comes from Tarantino. Because I don't know if you're going like, Tarantino's been going back and like reviewing old movies and putting it on.
Has he? I didn't know that.
It's on the New Beverly website.
Oh, wow.
And he said he doesn't want to review new movies because he doesn't want like his colleagues to think that he's like dogging any of the new movies that are coming out. No, so he's going back and he's doing like Coogan's Bluff and like he's doing movies from the 70s and he's even doing TV shows. So he's doing like episodes of TV shows that he remembers being particularly good. Wow. And again, it's like I just love that mix of like high and low, like that comes from, to me, that I learned that from Tarantino.
Yeah.
That's where, and I love that. And again, it's like in a weird way for me, like I grew up, the characters in the movie Blue Collar, those guys in real life I'm more connected to that than the artists making that as a piece of art, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I thought like my own like self limitation was I come from this world, so I have to prove myself that I belong. The same way I want to prove myself in being film Twitter, I was like, I have to prove myself as an artist because I come from the world of these guys, these workers. And it's funny to me because it's like the more I step back and look at it, it's like, well, look, these artists, they're making art about the guys that I know growing up. The same like famously Scorsese, who was it that told Scorsese like, all right, you're making shit. Why don't you go make a movie that you really
John Cassavetes said that
you care about, right? And that's how John
Cassavetes is the one.
Yeah,
he showed him Boxcar Bertha, and then he was like, "What is this? This is shit." He's like, "Don't make like why did you spent all this time making this movie and it's a piece of shit?" And then Mean Streets is what came. It was Cassavetes.
Yeah, so it's like it's an interesting thing that like really the poetry and the art kind of goes back to that real stuff. It's not because again, like in my mind as a kid, I had this notion of like some kind of higher level where you get to be an artist and you belong to like a caste that was, like literally like Greek gods. And it's like, no, it's the guys who are working with their hands. Like they're literally craftsmen making this stuff.
And that's what I'm saying. So like, for example, there's like in the film community, there are certain people that are needed. It's like, so take a movie like Blue Collar. It's like, so throughout the show, you said like, guys, this movie, like, guys like this, you worked with guys like this, you've literally worked like similar jobs that are in this movie. So when it comes to like, let's just say a review, I'd much rather read a review from you it's a combination of like, film, but you also know the world that this film depicts, or someone who's like 2 years out of school, they just literally, it's just like had a cool life, junior high school, went to college, 4 years of college was awesome. And then they got this like, cushy job somewhere, and like they might be good with words, but it's kind of like your deep understanding of the subject matter. It's kind of like, from a movie like Harriet, like I don't necessarily, the average person that's championing Harriet, it's kind of like, what do you know about any, you know what I'm saying? Like it's the same thing. So that's why, So I appreciate you being open about wanting to be in that film community world, but I think more people like you are needed because there's just a lot of folks don't know certain things. Like it's all about the now. It's just like whatever movies have been popular for the last 5 years, are masterpieces, and then like the older stuff, it's kind of like, well, that stuff is whatever. But so it's the.
I have the reverse.
Peter, you're
problem.
needed, man. You're needed.
I think so.
That's nice
to say. I believe so. Yeah.
I have the reverse problem in that
there.
the way that movies are made now, I almost can't, like, the way that they're shot and the way stories are told, because I've spent so much time watching old movies, like the medium doesn't register for me, if that makes sense. And it's weird because like Tarantino kind of gets blamed for all these like fast cutting, like whatever, like movies that came after him, like a lot of imitators. And like Tarantino's like all his movies are shot like long, big master. Like he doesn't do that at all. Like if anything, he has like really beautiful, like it's like he makes movies in like almost of a more classical way.
Well, that's the danger. Like, as someone who has many issues, like I could have a whole separate thing about Tarantino, but one thing I can't really deny with is like he knows how to make a movie, but that's another problem too. Is like a lot of younger filmmakers, like Tarantino's their reference point, and they don't realize that they're now a copy of a copy. And I don't mean to diss Tarantino. Yeah. Tarantino has his own movies, but every movie is like. It's like a movie mixtape to a certain degree.
Exactly.
The story itself, it's his own story, but certain characters, lines of dialogue, scenes, like he borrows and takes openly. And it's weird. It's very weird that a young filmmaker who's in like a Robert, not even just Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino, everyone from like that era, all openly wear their influences on their sleeves. But the people copying from a Robert Rodriguez or Tarantino don't know those movies.
Yeah. Well, this, like, and I was just having a conversation with somebody like, I think David Chase said that Sopranos is about gangsters that grew up watching The Godfather. Right. So they were the first generation of real gangsters who learned how to be a gangster by watching the movie Gangsters.
Right. Yeah.
And so all of us now are learning about, like, we're learning about how to, like, basically a lot of our like kind of consciousness was created by guys who are the students of another generation of guys who created their consciousness.
Yeah.
So in a way, like it's like, and that's what's cool. I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is about what Tarantino grew up with, like late '60s, like TV and LA is like that's his youth. So we're watching, him put that to screen. But it's. I mean, we could talk for hours or something. I love having you on. This is really
always,
great.
Always.
And,
this is like it's. I mean, like I said, I have my podcast, Zebras in America, is with my close friend Scott, who I text daily. And I'm here with my wife. But, this is like the closest to interaction. Like, I've been doing so many guest podcasts recently because it's just like, it's like the equivalent of like being outside. It's like, yes, I'll play with you. Yes, sure.
Yes.
Whenever you need me on. And going as long as, even once this is over. Yeah, anytime you guys need me on, please.
Oh, for sure. We could do, there's 100 movies we could do.
Yeah, we need to set up a reverse. We need to do a four-way thing with, you guys gotta come on Zebras. We need to figure out some dates and
let us
everything.
know.
So.
And especially now, we have all the time in the world. So let us know, man, anytime.
So we'll definitely put a link to your social media and your podcast on the description. Is there anything else you want to plug or?
Yeah, just like I'll DM like my website and everything. It's Pinnlandempire.com. If you just Google Zebras in America, it comes up. We're on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all that stuff. And then
links are going to be in the description, guys.
Oh, cool.
So anyone watching on YouTube, and then anyone listening on the podcast, we'll have all those links in there. Sorry, go on.
No. That's it. I'll send you all the links. Yeah, no, this is great. It's like, and it's also just beautiful how like a movie like Blue Collar could just branch off into the different conversations we had, but it all still applies. Like on the surface level, it's like, they're diverting, but it's like we're really not. It all branched off from Blue Collar. So
no, and especially the working stuff right now, it's highly relevant right now. People,
absolutely,
it really is, dude. So
I know. At first, again, I was like, are we gonna do this like heavy movie that doesn't really have anything to do with? And it's like the movie's about like anxiety, about money and work, and what does it mean to be a man? And all of us are going through that right now,
man. Yeah,
it's of the moment. So
1000%.
It's been great, man. Thank you so much for coming on. And this has been another episode of Kill You Last.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, bye, guys.
You're a funny guy, Sully. I like you. That's why I'm going to kill you last.
What do you want to tell me now, tough guy? I said, Ping, what are you doing here? I thought I told you to go fuck your mother.
You don't trust me at all, all, do you?
I tell you what, you make it through tomorrow without killing anybody, then I'll start trusting you.
Fair enough.
Remember, Sally, when I promised to kill you last?
That's right, Major. You did.
I lied.